Hi, nice people. So, I'm Gilda Haas, and I've been an organizer and an educator and an economic development planner for about 35 or 40 years. And I've tried to turn that over to the project of economic justice. And so I just came in on the tail end of the presentations, and so what I'm going to talk about is going to be a lot more parochial than what you heard. It's going to be about my experience, which is what I was asked to talk about. So I hope it's not too narrow for you. A couple of things to introduce that. We heard in the last presentation, or the next to the last presentation, about how impressive it is that the internal solidarity, the distance between the lowest paid worker and the highest paid worker in Mondragon in Spain is 5-1. Well, I think the counterpart, and what's really crucial about why you would have democracy at work, why you would have a discussion about economic justice, is about how far away we are from that. I can give you some links to little short blog posts I wrote about the last time I went to visit Mondragon, about how they dealt with problems when they had to have their first major plant shut down and stuff like that, etc. But in the United States, a corporation of a similar size, the distance between the lowest paid worker and the highest paid worker is more like 135-1. And so there. So inequality, so I don't have to tell you, because otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here, that one of the biggest problems that we have in this country and in this economy and in this world economy is the growing inequality. That all the efforts, I came into this work on the tail end of the war on poverty. That's when I was a little baby economic development planner. I came in on the tail end of the war on poverty, and everything has been unraveling since that time for the last 30 years. And so, but it has, especially in this moment, it has created a lot of courageous experiments as well. And so I think that's why we're here. So one other thing, so it's inequality on the one hand, and this is just a preface to what I was going to talk about. And the other big issue, and I'm going to link it again to Mondragon, because you were just talking about that, is culture. So Mondragon was the poorest region in Spain. It wasn't industrial. It was a shepherd economy. And the Basques in this part of Spain were the first to join up to fight the fascists in the Spanish Civil War. And that did not endear them to the successful fascists. And so I don't know if you've ever seen that painting, that big painting by Picasso, Guernica, with these, horrific, shrieking kind of figures, horses. Franco, who was the dictator who emerged victorious from the Spanish Civil War and then was the dictator of Spain for 30 years, targeted the Basques, invited Hitler to bomb his own people. That's what Guernica is. Guernica is right there. Guernica is right next to the town of Mondragon. This whole region, this cooperative region, includes the town of Guernica. And prohibited the Basque language from being written or spoken. There weren't any public schools at the time. So when Father Arizmendiarreta came in and started this slow process of where to start, and starting with the school, that was very strategic. And starting with an engineering polytechnical school was also very strategic. If you know, if you're thinking about what was happening in the 1950s, what was the winning proposition in the economy? So the result is one of the most resilient economies in Europe. But I just wanted to point out that one way of looking at it is it wasn't just an economic miracle. It was also a cultural preservation project, not unlike the stories that were written in Collective Courage by Jessica Nebhart, when slaves were freed, there was no economic infrastructure for them. And there was still all kinds of other stuff. But so, for example, some of the first cooperatives in the black community were funeral cooperatives. Because the respect and like, where are you going to bury your dead and stuff like that, how are you going to do that? And so, anyway, so that's just, so just when I'm talking, just keep in the back of your mind that I'm thinking about the change that we see. You know, I'm thinking about inequality at all these different levels, and I'm thinking about culture. And so what I was going to do is I was going to try and give you whatever value I could from my experience about what it takes to make change. You know, on the 135 to 1 tip, on the inequality growing. I mean, you don't really need a genius from France, named Piketty, to tell you that that's what's happening. But he was very helpful. What it takes to make change, and I think that's why you're here, like change being like transformative change, because that's what I understand that democracy at work desires. So is that correct?
Indeed.
And so as organizers, like we oftentimes struggle with the notion of transformative demands. We oftentimes struggle with ideas of power and democracy, like where to intervene, what that even means. And so I'm not going to tell you how to do transformative change. The only reason I'm not going to do that is because I don't know how to do that. Because it all depends on context, historical moment, and purpose. But I can tell you how I've tried. I think I can contribute something to the conversation about what the building blocks might look like in the United States, about what it might mean to pay more attention to the cultural infrastructure that we might need to get to where we want to be. So this is what's going to happen next. I'm going to do like a time machine through the last 35 years or so of my life. It will be quick. It won't be real time. It's just going to be a personal offering.
If it's going to be real time, then you might as well write it for all of us.
Exactly. It's just going to be a personal offering about like how I think about democracy work and liberation through the stories and through the mistakes and through the efforts like that I've been involved in.
Cool.
So that's what I got.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
Okay. Okay. So here we are in LA, and it's in the 1980s when I organized a grassroots coalition that was against redlining and for community reinvestment, and it was led mostly by women of color in Los Angeles and a few very exceptional men. And so that was my job. We were called Communities for Accountable Reinvestment. We did direct actions against banks. We forced the Federal Reserve to hold the very first hearings in the community in Watts. It was so funny. One of my favorite conversations was, okay, the president of Security Pacific Bank's driver wants to know where to park. Because they were so nervous, and then we would walk into Watts like this, next, shoulder to shoulder, because they were in deepest, darkest South Central.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, we negotiated with bank presidents. We even created our own People's Bank called the South Central People's Federal Credit Union. And we were, as my departed comrade Clyde Johnson used to say, a raggedy coalition of dedicated folks. And so this flyer is from the time of the savings and loan crisis, when the policy solution was a humongous bailout that favored the big banks and hurt the people. And as a result, savings and loans basically don't exist in this country anymore. But the national strategy of addressing the crisis by paying the people who caused it first and then figuring out how to fix the community issues later seems to have been well sustained. And you might notice on this flyer, so here was this problem I had. I was hired to work on the Community Reinvestment Act and organize and nobody knows what the Community Reinvestment Act is, and it's very I'm not against being nerdy. I'm a very nerdy person, but it's not necessarily your best foot forward when you're talking to community folks and stuff. And so I was figuring out, well, how can I talk about what's going on in the community and the Community Reinvestment Act and make it come to life? And so I made like a Monopoly board. And you could tell this is a long time ago, because if you look really closely, this is when cutting and pasting actually involved scissors. You see little outlines and like somebody's Xerox machine, you know, and stuff. And so, but you might notice that we're putting out this demonstration. We're talking about how the community got ripped off. You could look, I could send you the PowerPoint, you know, and you could look at it whenever, you know, closely if you want. But it doesn't say a time or a place or anything for this thing. And through the miracle of a very recent invention that we had, I was faxing it to a few friends. That was the fax machine, which nobody uses anymore. Anyways, it ended up in a magazine. And because it was through social networks, because it was about Security Pacific, it ended up in the management team meeting on the 50th floor of Bank of America's offices, because they thought it was hysterical because it wasn't about them. And so this actually, without organizing even though we'd been organizing for years, right, without actually organizing the demonstration is what got us a phone call to negotiate one of the first very community serving community reinvestment agreements with a major bank. So anyways, but that did not change the banking industry, as you know. I mean, never in my wildest dreams if I could fast forward, but still, you could see how much younger I was.
And then finally, one of the biggest problems that our organization sees with the implementation of the Community Reinvestment Act, and I'm not going to get into all of the data and all of our opinions about how these outstanding ratings are inflated, is that the regulators and the banks have managed to make community reinvestment something that is marginal to the business plan of an institution. It is something that you do on the side, like charitable giving. In fact, people who are CRA officers are oftentimes the same people who are over charitable givings for these institutions. And it's our opinion that until community needs are central to the business plan of these institutions, not only are our communities going to go to hell, but so are the banks. Thank you very much.
So that was the end of a long, if you look at the date, you could see that it was the day after the civil unrest in Los Angeles. And so I was testifying in Congress. It was already planned to talk about the Community Reinvestment Act, but it was so elevated because I could tell from my phone ringing off the hook that people, of course, associated the civil unrest with police abuse in Los Angeles. I mean, people all over the country were calling up saying, don't you have any policemen who aren't white in Los Angeles? But they also very much quickly understood that the denial of access to capital was as much a source of the fury. So the Community Reinvestment Act became this living, breathing thing. That redlining became this living, breathing thing that people really understood. And you could tell I was a lot younger there. So much more confident. How does that happen? I don't know. I know so much less now that I'm like, you know, much older. Anyways, but I still agree with what I said, but not about, but what banks? You know, it's not going to be Bank of America that's going to have them, and this is where I'll end the story about like how we're thinking about lending and things like that. So anyways, and so Benny knows all about this stuff. So you can, I hope I'm not boring you. So now we're in the 1990s, and I'm the founding director of strategic actions for a just economy, for which Benny is like one of our first activists. I'm still in the same place. I'm still in South Central Los Angeles. So we made this brochure to reclaim the community's place on the map. And the place that was called South Central Los Angeles, and then it was colonized by capital or well-meaning people hoping to attract capital, like ambitious politicians, big developers, earnest redevelopment officials, bureaucrats, and they all named South Central Los Angeles different things. The Figueroa Quarter, that was a big deal when the Staples Center was coming in. University Park for USC, South Park for the redevelopment agency, and then the city council, who obviously had a lot of time on their hands, took an official action to change the name of South Central Los Angeles to South LA. They had a vote, as though removing the word central from the name South Central Los Angeles would erase the pain and the conflict of the Watts riots, the 92 rebellions, and the current class struggles over contested terrain in the same neighborhoods. It didn't work. So they invented the Figueroa Quarter. They put up shiny signs, they put up banners, and they told us we were in the Figueroa Quarter. So we choose our battle. So we took that name and we made it our own, and we became the Figueroa Quarter Coalition for Economic Justice, which has the most unfortunate acronym of FICAGE, a name that only a mother could love. But as one of the comadres, I am proud of it. We negotiated a really famous community benefits agreement that became a model across the country. We organized thousands of people. We got a lot of them jobs, and we even got some of them housing, but the colony's still there. So again, it's steady work. Okay, so now I'm in the same place. I'm still in the same place. It's 2005. It's time for a new map. You can see that we sharpened our message. So we're not just introducing ourselves as a player. We're more confident about it. Of course, because I'm still young, right? And the Figueroa Quarter is now the Figueroa Quarter Strategy for Urban Land Reform, more bold. And so our map covers a larger area. We're still fighting to reclaim the community. We stopped, the school district had this brilliant plan to tear down an entire neighborhood to build a high school, and we were like, but then where are you going to get kids from? And so, because they were afraid, because there was this big scandal downtown with the Belmont High School being poisoned and stuff like that, so they didn't want to go after any kind of commercial property, etc. So after like meeting number 342, we said, you know, there's a 14-acre vacant site over there. That's the parking lot for Santee Dairy, where all the trucks go. Why don't you use that? And so, like, 342 meetings later, said, okay. And that's where Santee High School is now. And the kids are still there, and they go to the new school. We started a People's Land organization that Benny's also involved in. It also had a horrible name. Anything I was involved in has terrible names. But anyways, now it has a beautiful name. It was the Figueroa Quarter. Wasn't that terrible? Figueroa Quarter Community Land Trust. Nobody would even think of trying to pronounce that as an acronym. But now it's called Trust South LA. Isn't that a beautiful name? I know, it's just gorgeous. I like it. It means a lot of things. And for this conversation, it's important because you can't have transformation without trust. It's where you start. Trust is a building block of movement. You can't have transformation without movement. So trust, alignment, and a long-term view, that's the really part of where I'm going with the story of my life. And so the land trust, after big organizing campaign with the tenants, took over 2.5-acre Roland Curtis apartments from their venal slumlord, and they just had to really test trust, because in order to improve this development, build more affordable housing, include a beautiful health clinic inside of it, they had to temporarily relocate the 40 of the tenants who were living there. And so they had to do that in this housing market. So, in everything that you do, there's the will and the skill. And so usually, like, the redevelopment agency or other kinds of landlords, they just hire some relocation. These people, like, they themselves drove people around. They used their entire network. It was very, very difficult. But they had the will, and they just hung in there until it was done, and they did it. And so the land trust also building a large affordable housing development on the site. And they just, and they're building a democratic governance structure, and they've moved on this 7-acre parcel further south. That's going to be a much larger housing and community service development. And all of it's going to be owned and governed by the people, so that's going on. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm proud to have had anything to do with it. Okay, so this is completely different. So, did anyone recognize this? Yeah, it's the album cover for the Morrison Hotel with Jim Morrison and the Doors. But they're actually standing in the Morrison Hotel. It's a real place in the Figueroa Quarter. And about 10 years ago, it was the worst slum hotel we ever saw. When we were talking to some of the guys who used to be in the Doors, they said the owner was an asshole then. It was a different owner, but a different asshole. And he said, so but it was a terrible, terrible slum condition. It's untenable. We had to have a lot of discussions about, we didn't know anything about residential hotels. We were tenant organizers, should we do it, et cetera, et cetera. So we had to fight the police to get in to help the tenants, because even if the tenants invited us, we would get, they would call the police on our organizers as trespassers, because even scumbag slum owners were more respected at the time than tenants in the city, and had more rights because they owned real estate. It's their property and stuff. And so, but we did research and uncovered a really big slum empire and got the city, again, I'm really collapsing long stories. I hope you appreciate how succinct I'm being, even though it sounds like I'm talking a lot. I'm just like squishing years into here. But anyways, we got the city to file criminal charges against the owners, and it was the first big slum case they had since the 80s, and we actually managed to decriminalize poverty on this tiny patch of land. And from there, we worked on slum housing for 15 years or so. It's still going on at Sage, and also with our sister organizations in South LA, Esperanza, St. John's Well Child and Family Centers, health centers, and it was really important that we were able to build common cause between health promoters and organizers and tenant organizers and legal aid lawyers, because kids were getting lead poisoned and asthma and rat bites from where they went to sleep every night. And so doctors, like, you don't think of doctors as like powerless individuals, but like every week at St. John's Well Child Center, the pediatricians were pulling like cockroaches out of children's ears, or looking at rat bites, or hearing from the mothers about how the kids were afraid to use the bathroom because there was a rat that would pop up, you know, or something like that. And doctors don't have the power to they didn't want to send them back to, it would be just like, sending a drug addict to go home to a place where only people shut up, or something like that. They didn't want to do that. And so together we were able to have doctors write letters to the landlords. We had, we had health promoters teaching parents about how to manage the housing health, etc. We started to collapse the silos between housing and health and politics, and we created a big new idea in South Central Los Angeles that health was a human right, not a new idea to you, but it wasn't articulated before in that way. And so when a call went out with like just maybe 2 weeks notice for the first South Central conference about that, 800 people showed up just like that. It was nothing, with just a few weeks notice. And so what's beautiful and great about that is that the same kind of efforts were starting to emerge all around the country. Networks were being built, conversations were moving forward towards trust, alignment, and a long-term view about facing down neoliberalism for wherever you stood, about facing down gentrification and this push to banish people from their homes, from their cities. And so about 10 years ago, a bunch of us organizers from around the country met, like 100 organizers who were struggling with gentrification in their respective cities. We came together in LA for about 3 days, and it was challenging and great meeting, but at the end we all held hands and decided to stick together for the rest of our lives. And we built a national alliance called the Right to the City, and some years later, the Right to the City launched the Homes for All campaign, bringing together people around the fact that all over the country, like we get calls from Green Bay, Wisconsin about gentrification and displacement. I mean, who knew, you know? So people are really struggling to, you know, learn stuff. And I don't know how much you know about, this is another report that Right to the City put out, but most of our work is organizing and organizing organizers. After the 2008 financial crisis, equity investors swooped in to start to go to housing auctions and buy hundreds and hundreds, like entire neighborhoods of single-family home properties, and turn them into an entirely new market of rental housing. They're not particularly good at managing it. It's really scary about what will happen when they decide they want to sell. Without any pushback of existing laws, they're doing exactly the same thing that that caused the housing crisis of selling derivatives on Wall Street based on mortgages. They're doing exactly the same thing by creating new derivatives to sell that are based on rents.
Really?
Yes, and it's so people from SAGE and people from the Right to the City Alliance had to brief the Treasury Department of the United States. Like, nobody knew this was going on, and so like research is really important in terms of like following the money and understanding where we're vulnerable and where we're resilient and where we can intervene. Anyways, but the Right to the City as a Homes for All campaign is bringing together organizers and activists who are working on tenants' rights, creating land trusts and other forms of reclaiming the commons. And we're also struggling with figuring out how to configure the DNA of our organization so that it can grow horizontally and absorb the awakening of the sleeping giant of this mass of tenants who are becoming the majority population in more and more of our cities, and who are staking their claim of the right to the city all over the country. And so what's powerful here is that we came together online. We come together online all the time. In person, 135 of us were at a retreat in Chicago last year, and to learn from each other and strategize together so that the product of our efforts, and that was really one of the main purposes of forming the Right to the City Alliance. We all had like these secret crushes on each other from across the country, organizing crushes. Oh my God, Peter Bond is so dope. They're doing this massive resistance, you know, fantastic for, you know, eviction blockades and stuff like that. And but now we were all together, working together, and so that the product of our effort is more than the sum of the parts. And that was the goal. And so it takes a long time for that to occur. Building alignment, building trust, and holding a long-term view. It's someone important calling us. And right now this movement is just part of what it takes. There's lots of other stuff going on all around the country for the same reasons. It's not just the organizations that I work in. But like rent control, there's like 5 cities that are passing rent control right now in California. I was involved in rent control in 1970 something. Anyways, 78, right? But there hasn't been that kind of initiative since then. They're all over. People are taking back the land and forming land trusts in places as different as Boston and Jackson, Mississippi, pushing back against gentrification, preventing displacement with eviction blockades, and building up our collective rightful capacity for self-determination wherever we fight, wherever we study, wherever we're trying to develop together. So to me, like, Right to the City and the Homes for All campaign is just yet another building block, just one building block of the kind of transformation that I'm talking about, and that I'm assuming that you also are desirous of. So I want to tell you one more. Is it okay to tell you one more story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So about how groups came from around the country, supporting each other in efforts to transform the nature of economic relationships within local communities, at the workplace, between workers and consumers, and most importantly, in terms of the relationship between labor and capital. And so I'm involved with a group of folks in Los Angeles, also a raggedy group of well-meaning folks who are working in common cause with other groups from around 10 cities right now. It's just the very beginning around the country who are building a financial cooperative which rests on the foundation of shared principles. And the first member of the cooperative and the organization that brought us together is the Working World, which is a radical lender which started helping out the cooperatives that came out of the recuperated factory movement in Argentina. When you talk to people from Argentina and they say, oh yeah, during the last financial crisis, they were like, which one? Because it's a rolling problem and stuff. And then they moved to do more kind of business development, micro-lending, again, from a similar perspective in Nicaragua, and then most notably in the United States, their first big project was the financial support and technical assistance support of a window factory that you mentioned earlier, New Era Windows, with financing and technical support. And so the principles that hold us together, along with tools and mutual support, and I can't emphasize how much important it is to be part of a movement of movements where there's enough trust to learn from each other. It's so inspiring. Every time I get on a call with people from the financial cooperative who are in like Baltimore or like wherever they are, the Southern Reparations Loan Fund in the South, which has this massive kind of agenda, it just makes me want to up my game. And it just gives me the confidence that I can, because I have people to talk to. Anyway, so the principles and the tools of mutual support and learning are a culmination. To me, like what's happening here is a culmination of the purpose and challenges of the movement work that I was sharing with you, and these stories about my little quick trip through my life. And so here are the principles, and I think they're cool. We share them, we struggle with them. So one principle, this is for a financial cooperative, is like, how are we going to build infrastructure? We're going to build cooperatives. Where's the money going to come from? Because we've been robbed. Somebody, it's like someone gave me this really great analogy about affirmative action. Like, oh, affirmative action, that's so over. We're done with that. We don't need affirmative action anymore. Really? So let's say, the four of us have been playing poker for 20 years. And you've been cheating. And so, but you're cool. I call you on it, and you go, oh, that's cool, Gilda. I'll stop. So what's wrong with that? You have all the goddamn chips. And so that's what's, like, where are we going to get the chips? Okay, so like we do have to, like, all the land in Los Angeles is owned by somebody. And it'd be becoming increasingly absentee owned. So like all of the pitches to funders when we were starting the South Central People's Federal Credit Union, when we were starting Trust South LA, even when it had a worse name, it was really like, this neighborhood is 92% absentee owned. It wasn't always like that. We cannot change that unless somebody helps stake us. And I nominate you. Okay. So anyways, but how do we do this in a way that has sustainability? We have to make sure that the money that we are pulling together into a financial cooperative is invested in sustainable, productive enterprises, sustainable, productive jobs, that the money isn't grants, that it's money that's going to get paid back. But it's not just money that's going to get paid back, it's money that is going to foster self-determination and economic independence in the long run of the financial cooperative. And so paying it forward so that initial money, when it's paid back, can go help capitalize loans in the area from which the loans are being paid back. Okay, so maximizing community benefit. I don't have to, like a lot of people, like when you're starting a cooperative, like they're wondering, like, how do you, like you're thinking about starting a business, but it's not so different than organizing when you think about, like, what do people want and need? What do people want and need? There's lots of things you can sell. That's one of the things that's so wonderful about America. You can sell anything, right? But what do people want and need? And what do they want and need enough that they'll pay for it? And that it's worth it to them. And how can you provide excellent products and services in service to that demand and stuff like that? There's just a really more fundamental understanding of what supply and demand. Supply and demand isn't bullshit. It's just bullshit the way we talk about it. There's actually is such a thing, that there's things that are unavailable that might be desirable, and then there's things that people want and need. So, and then this is a challenge to all of us, this idea of radical inclusion. So unlike Mondragon, where pretty much everybody who lived in Mondragon was Basque, and there wasn't like these large excluded populations of, everybody was poor. Everybody was despised by Franco, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't have a legacy of slavery. They didn't have economic relationships internationally that fostered undocumented people to come here for sanctuary. So anyway, so radical inclusion means that you lend and facilitate lending to people who are typically excluded from access to finance, that you invest in them, that you invest time in them, that you start working with them before a loan application, that you start thinking together and working together, that you're part of this team. And it always requires technical assistance and proper planning and success of the project. And one of the things, and I'll get to what is non-extraction, because you did talk about extraction. And so extraction, there's all kinds of extraction. None of it is sustainable. So typical kind of extraction is extracting oil from the ground when we could just as well leave it there right now. Fracking, all kinds of extraction. But the most common kind of extraction is the extraction of human labor, or like the wage theft that you were talking about. And the biggest form of wage theft, depending on what kind of community is not even having the opportunity to get hired. You're ready, you're trained, you're willing to go to work, and people won't hire you either because of the color of your skin or because you don't have the right relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So radical inclusion is necessary to be a radical lender, to facilitate transformation. Making sure that you don't extract from the businesses that you are helping to start. So what would that look like? There's typical things that you're looking for. So you're looking for character, like, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? No, you cannot get a loan, right? What is your credit history? You don't have one. Oh, or you have a bad one because you got evicted. Why did you get evicted? Because you didn't make enough money to pay your rent, and stuff like that. So no, you cannot get a loan. Do you have collateral? Do you have wealth that you, through your blood, sweat, and tears, purchased, acquired, that you own before I even met you? Oh, you could put that up, and if you don't be successful, I'll take it. So none of these things are underwriting criteria for the financial cooperative. None of these things are, and that is why we have to work together to build business models and business plans that we all can see will work, that we're all taking risks together. Okay, and then finally, building cooperative democratic ownership within communities, like deepening democracy in communities so that people have the experience of democracy every day when they go to work, which is something that everybody does. And so, and so here's, so some of these have been mentioned. So here's some of the sustainable productive projects that have begun to benefit from this very, very young financial cooperative in Los Angeles. Pacific Electric Worker-Owned Cooperative. I'm the current loan officer for that loan. In Baltimore, amazing. Baltimore has an amazing center. It's a bookstore. It's an anarchist bookstore called Red Emma's. It's a restaurant. It's got like 20 worker owners, very diverse. They have many, very good business model. They have very, very much a part of the progressive community in Baltimore. It's beautiful. Anyways, but they help work with the Taharka brothers, and the Taharka brothers are young African American men who make ice cream and sell political awareness from the back of their ice cream truck while they're running a wholesale ice cream business. And this is like this humongous truck they have, Taharka, food for thought. They have books in the back, and it's just amazing. They have great music, all this other kind of stuff. And so I won't get into the details of the loans and stuff like that, but okay. In Jacksonville, I don't have anyone heard of the Dream Defenders? The Dream Defenders started in Florida, young African American, other people of color, but really young people who rose up in organization and resistance and proactive work when Trayvon Martin was killed in their midst, right? And it's the only email. I'm not a wealthy person. I don't know if you could guess, but anyways, it's the only email I ever got that just talked about an organization that I had never heard of, and I read about it, and I listened to their little video, and I just immediately gave them $100 I didn't know a single person there, because I was so impressed. But anyway, so in Jacksonville, the Dream Defenders is one of the first loans of the Southern Reparation Loan Fund, which is a wonderful name, and equally wonderful name, their t-shirt company is called Rebel Threads. I think if you're going to co-opt a name, co-opt Rebel. If you're a black person in the South, it's called Rebel Threads. It's an economic cooperative project of the Dream Defenders, which has absolutely maximized. Oh. Okay, so this is one of their first products. You will see they have a sense of humor. So this is one of their first products. It is it's the commemoration of the, oh sorry, muffling myself, something my husband would love to do. Anyway, it's the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, and so and they dropped the pre-sale online on Black Friday. Get it? And so they're a wonderful company, but they're very, very thoughtful and have a lot of integrity. So this shirt, Rebel Threads doesn't sew the shirts. They silk screen the shirts, they do the designs, they sell the shirts and stuff like that. Somebody has to sew the shirts. So they didn't want to extract labor unfairly. So people that sew the shirts are Opportunity Threads, which is a worker cooperative that's been around for a long time in North Carolina, mostly Latino immigrant workers in a sewing factory. That's a cooperative. And the cotton comes from a cotton cooperative in Texas. So, booyah. Okay, and then other friends. And so, other friends, this is Rich City Rides, which is a cooperative bicycle store and social enterprise, which will be the first loan of a new effort, which is one of our, sisters and the peers and the financial cooperative of Cooperation Richmond. So, anyways, I talked for a long time. Okay, I'm okay? Okay, so what's important about the financial cooperative and all of the stories that I've been telling you today is they all show ways in which we can together create the building blocks of a movement that has the will and the skill to push back against the culture that we've received. And then together begin to see things in a new way as we plant the seeds of transformation. That's what this is about. And that's what, these principles they're very well articulated, these principles, they're very challenging, these principles for lending. This is not how banks think, okay? So you have to switch it up, you have to stand committed. And so just one other thing that's important to me is that what's essential for us to know about transformation is that it's an act of creation. It is a creative process. It's not a fixed thing. It requires experimentation and learning and doing. And that's why when we bail out the banks first and let the communities go to hell, we're not only committing an immoral economic act, we are denying everybody the right to engage in the messy work of collective creative problem solving, which is the business of democracy. That's what democracy is in a nutshell, is people making decisions together and taking responsibility for those decisions and learning from the mistakes. So, ta-da! So, how do we move this stuff here and now in Los Angeles? Today there are 3 or 4 or 5 worker co-ops in LA. So it seems important that a first step would be to make the idea available to people. And in the process, create a lot of creative opportunities for people to experiment with the ideas in real life. Do experiments. Do small, rapid prototypes. Do business together. And so what if next year 5,000 people who lived in Los Angeles knew what a worker cooperative was? The chances are some of them will get excited and come back. I think a lot can happen. And so there's literally a vehicle for doing that. This is my vehicle. It was,
You drive it here.
so,
What kind of mileage do you get?
pardon?
What kind of mileage do you get?
Oh my God. So anyway, the idea was it would be really wonderful to have a social center where you could just go and take Cooperative 101 10 times if you wanted to, or you could meet another person who's interested in a cookie cooperative with, oh, I didn't know you were interested in cookies too, what do you know how to do, et cetera, or, never take, Cooperative 101, but just have a place where these kinds of ideas could be discussed and people could build and develop and create community and stuff like that. But, it's Los Angeles, and so, I've never been here. There's plenty of places to meet in Los Angeles, but I've never. It's a very big economic investment to choose a place to start a center like that. So if I start one in East LA, no one from South LA will know it's there or go there. If I start one in my neighborhood in Mid City, people from Santa Monica wouldn't come there, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is Los Angeles. You go to where the peoples are, and then when there's enough there, then you might decide, or you might just continue. So for example, we did several workshops for the East Los Angeles Community Corporation last year, and and they are the people who've been taking on the mantle of legalizing street vending, like organizing the street vending campaign in Los Angeles, which many years ago was mostly a campaign for Central American refugees, but now it's for all kinds of people just trying to get over, and they now have staffed up and have a department that's working and incubating cooperatives, worker cooperatives, building on the relationships that they have, and sharing with other folks and being part of the LA Co-op Lab. So anyways, I will stop talking. Thank you for your time. One other shirt, can I just tell you one other shirt, my favorite shirt, but it wasn't available when I bought this for everybody I know. They're really comfy, they're really soft, they're not cheap. Anyways, but there's one, my favorite shirt that they have, it's in giant letters. The whole shirt is in giant white letters, and it says, "I just came from the future and we won." Isn't that adorable? I'm sorry, yes.
Is there a way to track the location of the LA Co-op Lab truck?
No, but you can invite me to, let's say you have a group of 10 people that want to play giant co-opoly or want to learn about a business, how to do the business model canvas, and then we will come. We'll make a date. So we've just barely started, but we're not like Twitter ready, like, oh, we're selling, like the Taharka brothers, we don't have ice cream. Yeah. So someone said, oh, you should call it looks like a taco truck, you should call your truck Taco, Technical Assistance for Cooperatives. And I was like, this is LA, people will kill me if all I do is talk and they're waiting to eat tacos. People here like tacos. So he said you should call it Taco. Not funny.
Co-op Tuesdays.
Co-op Tuesdays, we could do that, but we could do that wherever. You know what I mean? We could do that wherever. We did it in East LA. We could do it in Skid Row, etc. But we're just starting, and there's a, and we're like we did a workshop at some street fair. We were at some street fair and we were counting the people that we talked to, and it's like, oh, only 4,722 people to go for our 5,000 people goal. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So the financial co-op that you outlined so well, is that a like an actual thing?
It's an actual thing.
Does it have a name?
It's housed in the Working World because it's just started.
Yeah.
The Working World was the first, and you could go to the.
That's the Argentinian. That's the.
But you could go to the website of the Working World, and when you look at about, you can also see the peer. You'll see there's a description of the peer network. There's some stories that I haven't told you about the different players. But this is a very nascent thing. It's just started. But so basically, each of the areas are developing their own loan fund. The idea is that collectively to get investors and capital, that the bigger our portfolio is, the more benefit there is to everybody, the more diversity we have in our portfolio, like what I just showed you. Shirts, Taharka ice cream, solar energy. Yeah.
I'm very interested in this financial co-op, and so I guess my first question has to do with, you're talking about portfolio. Is this a profitable co-op? Are you providing dividends to investors?
No, I'm sure, I mean, maybe there's something, this is about, I think there's gift capital. I don't know about all of the original capitalization, but what this is patient capital. So you're making loans to businesses, you're trying to make the businesses successful, you're screening them for the principles that I showed you, and they replenish the loan fund with interest.
Okay, so there's
but not until they're solvent, and you don't have recourse. You have, like, if they took the loan
Yeah.
and they bought a building with it, with your loan, and they fail, then you have recourse to the building because that was your investment capital. But if nobody puts their house up or their truck up as collateral that they already have, there's no recourse to anything that people already had. That's extractive.
Okay, yeah, so just a quick follow-up, because you talked about like being careful not to be robbed, even with the financial capital.
Being careful not to be robbed?
Yeah.
No, I said we have been robbed.
Yeah. You talked about, you have to be very cautious.
They met a
about
long
who you
time
invest
ago
in,
and robbed
yeah.
us.
But it's like, you're also talking about radical inclusion. These are people that you outlined as like, traditional lending mechanisms will not do it because they consider it too risky.
They also have severe biases against. It's like the reason. So for example, the reason that in South Central Los Angeles you could have one of the busiest banks make no loans in South Central Los Angeles. I just let me give you one example. That's the same story I was showing you, like right the day after the civil unrest in Los Angeles. So after civil unrest in Los Angeles, there's these moments, like this Trump moment and stuff like that, when people want to step up and stuff like that. So Bank of America knew to come to us and said, we want to make business loans. We've already negotiated with you really great underwriting criteria, so we want to make business loans to businesses that were harmed during the riots and stuff like that. And so we were like, cool. And so then they started doing it, and they made business loans. So then, to folks in South Central Los Angeles, this is a funny example of discrimination because people got money, right? But then folks went to pay back their loan, and there was no mechanism in place for them to pay back their loan because Bank of America didn't think that people in South Central Los Angeles would pay back their loan.
What?
I'm serious. They were like, again, they didn't see South Central Los Angeles as part of their business plan. They were going to do some PR stunt. They were going to lose money on it. Huh?
And they could more than afford to do that. That was probably
Yeah, but the real thing was the same reasons that they wouldn't make loans in South Central before was the reason that they were making loans in South Central and wouldn't even bother. They had to set up so there's lots of bias. And then there's also lots of self-fulfilling prophecies about why you wouldn't have a good
So, I'm sorry. I just wanted to finish my question.
Okay. It's probably over my head. Okay.
No, it's not. I'm sure. It's just that, like, there are these biases and there's this racism, but there's also, and that has a lot to do with like what people assume about these individuals, like ventures are able to happen. But then, there's also like a real risk, which is that the structure of the state, the structure of the market itself, discriminates against people who say like have gone to prison. Meaning that like if you gave them a loan, it seems like you're assuming the risk of the fact that now they have to go out and try to do something with that money, and that system's going to fight them.
But that's why it's not like a regular lending situation. So the first time I went to Mondragon was in 1980, and at that time the bank was called the Caja Laboral, and the bank was started and it was owned by the cooperatives, and its purpose was to make more jobs. And that's kind of the purpose of the financial cooperative. The purpose is to create more opportunities, more equity, et cetera. So in order to do that, and I saw that in 1980 as well, that we play a heavier hand as a partner, not as a boss, but as a partner. I'll call up Brendan, who started the Working World, and he'll be at New Era Windows working on some stuff with them. When they first started, one of the loan officers, if there weren't, it was really hard to start a business. He might be on the line trying to figure out how to make windows, because they need an extra hand or something, like whatever it takes. So anyways, it just really depends, and we're very, very diverse, and we're just starting, and we're starting together. We're watching each other start together, make loans, manage loans, learn, etc. And the whole system is learning. And I think that's a way to build infrastructure that's a way to build collective learning, like at some level of scale. What were you going to ask?
No, I was just gonna say, it sounds to me, the impression I get is that the structure, not just the qualifications of getting a loan, but the structure, the quote-unquote terms, and for lack of a better word, the fine print, is designed so that's a successful loan.
So the other thing is that it's not quick.
Right, exactly.
It's not, you're not gonna,
That's,
if you think you're gonna get a loan from, you know, in a month and you're gonna be rocking and rolling, it's probably not gonna be because again, you need to have the trust, the alignment, and the long-term view on how this is gonna work. For example, like it might end up that you just start out by financing a part of a business. So the Taharka Brothers loan in Baltimore, it didn't fund the whole business, it funded the truck. You know, which, you know, and it's a way for you to start building like this financial relationship. And also look at what's really important right now in terms of capitalizing the enterprise. Yes, sir.
Just quickly, you mentioned something about blog posts, if we wanted to read
Oh
more
yeah,
about
okay, so in addition to, see, that's me if I were younger and orange. So I have an alter ego called Dr. Pop. So like around 2009, I started a popular education website called Dr. Pop. It's drpop.org. And so if you search on it, Mondragon, there's 3 short blog posts that I wrote when I came back from Mondragon, like last year or the year before, whenever it was. So one, I'm an educator, so I went and visited their college, because one of the things, so after like 50 years, like Mondragon was worried about getting insular and losing their entrepreneurial edge, so they started a college to create new entrepreneurs in the Basque region and stuff like that. So I visited it, and the way that they teach is so after my own heart. I just won't describe it, but I wrote it down. So some examples, I hung out with some of the students, and that was really wonderful. The other one was a story about what happened when Fagor, the first cooperative, which actually Fagor is Fagor Industries, but the first cooperative that was started after the students who graduated from the Polytechnical actually went under. And it was during, the financial crisis and stuff like that. You know, stuff was going under, and also it was during a period where, there were a lot of reasons, but including bad management. But they make, domestic. It was Fagor Domestica. So they make stoves and refrigerators that like people buy for their houses. So Spain had the worst foreclosure, like worse than here. Nobody was buying stoves and refrigerators in Spain. Even in Europe, there was like a financial crisis. So they went under. So there's a story about how they handle that, and then I think you find that really interesting compared to, and I worked in the plant closures movement in the 80s when all the plants were closing around here, et cetera, et cetera. There's no example like it, et cetera. And then I can't remember what the third one is, but I'm sure it's really good because I wrote it.
All right, well, I think it's about time we wrap it up. Thank you so much, Gilda.
You're welcome.